just going to give it another minute because we're still meeting a lot of people. If you would, in the chat box, kind of put your name and where you teach so we kind of see all the different schools we have. And at the top of my shared screen is a tiny URL link that you can access this document that I'm going to be sharing on my screen, on your screen if you would like. And Todd will stick it back in the chat box for us again. And so we'll have it both places. We're going to keep everyone muted because we're right now at over 130 people. And so that's a lot of people to try to talk all at one time. So we're going to mute everyone and ask you to ask your questions in the chat box. And I have a couple of friends who are on with me are going to help me monitor the chat box so we make sure we can answer questions. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Brenda Beamer Chapman. I'm the Director for Social Studies at the State Department of Education. And I'm going to let Todd introduce himself.
I'm Todd Gregg. I'm Director for Financial and Business Education at the State Department.
Todd has also taught almost everything high school social studies, I think. So he's really helpful with our high school curriculum we have. And I also have Timmy Spangler on, who I work with quite a bit because she's our librarian and instructional materials director at the State Department. And she's going to be monitoring our chat for us and helping us out. So I appreciate her joining us today. One more time, we're still letting a few people in. If you would tell us who you are and where you teach into the chat box. We're muting everyone because we're well over 140 participants right now. And so that's a lot of people to try to talk at once. So if you will put your questions in the chat box. Timmy is making sure that she's monitoring that so we can make sure we get everyone's questions answered as best we can. This is a new frontier and we're all learning Zoom. So if you would look at your message, if you think you're messaging everyone, make sure it says everyone out to the side instead of privately, or you can message people privately. That's one of the things we had this morning going on. So if you want to message everyone, make sure it says everyone on your drop down. You can also message privately on. You guys see any more people in the waiting room? I don't see anybody else.
I think I've been watching that and I just let someone in. So
okay. I don't really see anybody else for me to let in. So that may mean you've let them all in. So we're gonna go ahead and get started and we'll kind of watch that and let people in as they come. Once again, I'm Brenda Beamer Chapman. I'm Director of Social Studies for the State Department of Education. And we're really excited that you're joining us this afternoon. If you would put your name in the chat box and where you teach, that'll kind of let us see who's all on the call. And we're going to use the chat box for questions. And Timmy Spangler, who's our Director of Libraries and Instructional Materials, is going to kind of watch the chat box for us to make sure we get all the questions out there. We have a lot of participants this afternoon, and it would be really hard, I think, for all of us to have our audio on. So we've muted everyone. And if you'll just put your questions in the chat box, that'll help us out. Now I'm going to let Todd introduce himself one more time. He's my partner.
I'm Todd Gregg. I'm Director of Financial and Business Education at the State Department of Ed and former high school history and social studies teacher.
So once again, I'm really excited to see some of you on the video and a lot of you putting your names in the chat. We've been working from home now for at least 2 weeks. And so we've been Zoom chatting with our office mates just so we don't go crazy at home. So we're glad to see some social studies teachers. At the top of my screen that I'm sharing with you, you'll see a tiny URL. If you would go to that, you'll be able to access this document live on your computer. And Todd will once again drop it in the chat box for us here in a little bit, and that way you'll have it both places. And that way you'll be able to follow us if you want to. All the links are live.
Okay. And then what?
First of all, I'd like to welcome you this afternoon. Todd, it says you're hard to hear, so you might just speak into your microphone when.
I can't see their faces. Well, I can't see the people that's talking.
And you won't be able to see everyone. You'll just be able to see yourself probably and people that, a few people, but maybe not everybody.
Okay.
We're venturing into a brand new world with distance learning. I'm gonna, there we go. Oh, I gotta let some more people in, sorry. One of the things I want to talk about is distance learning is a continuous learning opportunity for students starting April 6th through the end of the school year. And I know you've all been talking at your districts about what that end will be. Each district will be developing a local distance learning plan, which includes what you will focus on. Each district's going to be doing that. So a lot of the specifics for your plan, you'll be working with your districts to create. We have a distance learning document that we've created for social studies to help with that. And we're going to be sharing that. You guys are really lucky because it's now live. We were in the afternoon, and so now it's live. This is to maintain knowledge and continual learning. This is not going to be a regular school day your kids are going to be doing. It's not going to be a 7-period class like they're used to doing. You're not going to be teaching 7 periods a day like you're used to doing. It's going to look a little different. It's going to feel a little different. It doesn't have to be tech. It could be tech, but it doesn't have to be tech. For you guys, that's we just put the tiny URL in the chat box if you needed that. And one of the things I wanted to give you permission to look at is when something doesn't work, don't beat yourself up about it. Give yourself grace and go on to the next idea. Just yesterday, I had to learn something on the fly. I had great people texting me and messaging me on Teams, but I'm a visual learner and I didn't really have anything for them to come over and say, you need to do this, this, and this. There was a lot of tears shed and a lot of angst, but it happened. I got it done. I learned. And so I know you're going to feel some of that. I know your students are going to feel some of that. So nothing is going to be perfect. Give yourself permission to change if it's not working for you. But if it's working for you, you can stick with it. It's not, once again, not going to look like a regular class day. It's not going to look like all the assignments you're used to assigning or doing. It's going to look a little different for each school and each class, and your district's going to be working on a plan for that. Todd, do you have anything you want to add as we're working through that? Oh, Todd, we can't hear you. Did it unmute you, Todd? Okay, well, here we go. Did we get it unmuted? Now, Todd, can we hear you? We can't. Okay, well, Todd may have to type in the chat box. When we get him going, we'll work on that. The next thing we're going to talk about is the teacher self-care. First of all, I want you guys to take care of yourself first. I know some of you have kids at home. Your workspace is now going to be 4 seconds commute instead of 10 minutes or an hour commute. Make sure you have a separate work and home space for yourself, and you'll have to set up structures that work for your family. So give yourself grace to do that. There's no right or wrong answer for that. Maybe you're going to do work in the morning and in the afternoon you're going to work with your kids doing that, or vice versa. So take care of yourself first. Remember, if you have a hobby that makes you feel happy and less stressed, you should do that. If you like to cook, you should take time to do that. If you like to read a book, you should take time to do that. If you can get outside and enjoy the nice weather we've had for a few days, you should do that. So don't feel like you're at your computer for 7 or 8 hours. Make sure that you're giving yourself some time to relax and de-stress yourself and your family. Do we have Timmy or Todd back?
Right. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Todd.
All right. I switched headphones. I was just going to add kind of the last thing that Brenda said. Just remember to have grace for yourself. We're all kind of in uncharted territory, and none of us are probably experts on what anything that life looks like for us right now. So be nice to yourself as well as other people. Practice self-care and take care of each other during this time.
As you can hear, Todd has little ones at home.
Yes, I do.
So just like you, I have college students there at home now doing their online work. My husband's at home doing his, and I'm doing home. So we have 4 stations around here that we're working on, and I know you guys have that too. So give yourself grace, give yourself time, and if your structure is going to look different, it may look different from week to week. I know people have said, I tried this schedule, it didn't work, I'm going to try another one. So give yourself a chance to do that. The next box that you see, we don't have time for this today, but we've created a place where you could share some ideas with us, because crowdsourcing and collaborating is going to be what we need to do in this space. And so notice we have a middle school link that says ideas with no technology, because we know some of our students don't have a device, or even if they have a device, don't have Wi-Fi or reliable Wi-Fi. So we're looking for ideas with no technology that they could do at home, and then ideas that require technology, because some of your students will have, and you'll be able to do that. And there's also high school ideas with no tech and ideas that require technology. So as we go through this, at the end, I'm going to talk to you about, we're going to be doing this every week on a specific time to have a chance to kind of chat. And we'll be able to share some of these ideas. So this is kind of a crowdsourcing document for you guys to put some ideas. We're going to show you some of the ideas we came up with, but I know you all have great ideas that you can share, and so we hope that you will, and we'll be able to share some of those ideas next week. So I'm going to click on right now the guidance document that just went live, really about the time we were doing some of our webinars around 11 o'clock. And so this is the guidance specifically for social studies, which we're going to look at. The link at the top of the page will take you to the page right now that's live at the SDE that has all grades on there. This will be the social studies one for 6 through 12, but all grades will be on there and all subjects will be on there. And so you can click on that link if you want to see the website and get to it that way. One of the things that you'll notice the first is, what are reasonable goals for students learning in your context? So some of the guidelines we've looked at has talked about social studies being a regular class period, like 40 to 60 minutes, 2 times a week. So that's kind of the guidance we are putting out. I know that you and your districts are going to decide what that looks like, but that's kind of the recommendation. We know some students have access via technology, internet, phones, and others, so you'll have to be a little flexible about how you communicate with your students. Also remember, you're going to have families who may be in my exact same situation with everybody at home. So they're working from home and they have everyone else they're trying to manage. You're also going to have parents who are also working and trying to manage their kids at home. So a little grace with families too about how this is going to look, and their understandings and background knowledge. So it's not, once again, it's not going to be where the kids have to be doing social studies for 60 minutes every day and you have to be online with them or whatever every day at a certain time. It's going to be something you're going to give them that they're kind of working on this, and it will look different depending on what your district decides to do. How will students be introduced to the topic? There's just some ideas here. It could be a video of you or a video of someone else introducing the topic. If you're in a place where you can do Zoom with your class because they all have access, you can do things like that. You could ask an essential question and ask them to investigate that question. You could let them find an issue that's meaningful to them and work through it that way, or you could give them a primary source or an article to go with. But it's going to look different for different parts of you because of how your students have access to tech or not. So your district's going to be coming up with the more guidelines for that. Then ways students can collect information. You can kind of be really, really creative about that. They can do things like they've done in class with organizers and things like that, or you could have them do something digital if they have capability to do that, or maybe an infographic. In what ways can students be prompted to have productive discussions with their peers or family members? They could have something where they're explaining their issue or topic they're studying to a family member. They might could call another student in the class to discuss that. If it's feasible, you might have some kind of online discussion board or chat, or any of the ways that you can communicate visually like we are today, numerous ways to do that. Ways your students could document their progress, once again, that's gonna be all the things you do in your class anyway. So all the things you could think of would be ways they could share. And then in what ways could they share artifacts with you? And once again, they could email you if you have Google Suite. There's all kinds of classroom capabilities or discussion boards or social media or a phone call, or we'll look at the CDC guidelines in a second about paper. But all the ways you can think of that they could maybe show you the work they're doing, and feedback will be that same manner. Todd or Timmy, anybody want to chime in? Timmy, you're muted, so let me see if I can unmute you.
I got myself unmuted.
There you go.
They said that they had heard that Zoom wasn't CIPA, didn't follow CIPA guidelines, which is the Children's Internet Protection Act, and I don't have an answer to that. Do you?
I don't either, and I think your district is going to be the one that decides if that's something you could do. I know that is a concern, and I don't really have an answer for that. So your district will be deciding what platforms that you can use. And I know I'm going to keep saying your district, but we're going to give some guidelines, but your district's the one who's going to set up the plan and for the teachers to work with. And so since I don't know what all of those are, I can't make a general statement about that. Anything else you see in the chat box, Timmy?
I don't know anyone who.
So a lot of the questions we were getting to about special ed, in this little box right here in the gray box, there is a link to the special education page, and they are updating that as we speak on guidelines for helping your special ed students. And so we're the curriculum and instruction office, so we're in charge of helping with things that the kids could be doing, and they're going to work on special ed kids on things like that. And then English language learners is the same thing. There's going to be their own site there for that department, and they're going to work on that. So when you click on either one of those, it's going to go to their special page for this time with working with those students. So I hope that helps. We're kind of trying to take on the curriculum instruction piece, and they're trying to take on the special ed and English language learners, so that we can get people who have experience at those things working on that. Todd or Timmy, anything in the chat box? Or
Lots of special ed stuff, and then learning management systems having chat.
yeah, if your school has a learning management system, you're ahead of the game already, and I know a lot of you do have that. And then you just have to work with the kids who might not have tech access. but that's a bit, you're ahead of the game with that. I know a lot of schools are being pretty creative about that. So you're just working with your district administrators to make sure however you're communicating is the way they want you to communicate. But there are a lot of ways out there. If you have
Someone said Teams, which we have really, we've had it, but we haven't really used it. And we've got baptism by fire at our office with it.
yeah, if you have Teams, you're able to work it within your system. And so it's just, you don't have outside people coming in. So that's great. I know I see somebody that said Google Hangouts. I know there's a lot of ways you can do that. And the secondary teachers are way more experienced than that with meeting with your kids in alternative ways. And we're going to be recording this session with all the questions in the chat box also. So if people weren't able to come today, we'll be able to see the recording, and they'll be able to see the chat questions. And hopefully, if we didn't get some of these answered, we'll have some answers for them on the next time we meet next week. Any other questions you see, Timmy?
No, not anything that we haven't talked about.
Okay.
One that I really like here that just popped up was doing journaling about the COVID-19 and the students' observations about the impact of the virus. And we talked in one that Brenda and I were in earlier, that those journals 100 years from now, you could have, I mean, they're going to be primary documents. So I think that's really important.
So this is great for us as social studies teachers. We're always talking about primary documents. And so this is a chance for them to produce those documents that maybe people are looking at earlier. And if they could video those would be great. And I know when we get to the tech piece where we've got some things listed for tech, I know I already forgot one, which is voice.
Okay, Brenda, here comes another question from Dustin Bishop.
Okay.
Silly question, but are we expected to continue to try to meet OSDE social studies standards for our subjects as best we can, or do we have more freedom? And this is something we've really talked about.
Okay, so basically what our guidance is going to be is that obviously we don't want kids not doing anything for 6 weeks and then 12 weeks of summer, right? And so we want them to be doing those skills and things to review and reinforce the things you've done. So don't beat yourself up about trying to get to all the things you haven't done yet. Don't try to make, I know that the last part of the 9 weeks for a lot of social studies teachers is a lot. So don't worry about trying to cram all that in. We're trying to reinforce their skills and maybe working with the content that you've already worked with. And we're just going to know as teachers next year when they come in, they may not have quite as much of the background knowledge from the class before, because we're just going to have to work in the situation that we're in. With that said, your districts are going to be the people who are creating the plan. So if they want you to try to do those skills with the content you would be doing, but I would guess that you're just going to try to do something. And we're going to show you here in just a second. Our next thing is going to be just some ideas to do with kids that are general skills type of ideas, and no tech ideas. And then we're also going to show you some tech ideas for those of you that have kids who have access to technology. So I know that there's going to kind of be a divide with that. We have some kids that have tech and some that don't. So we're trying to work to accommodate all of them. If they have tech and you can do some things through Google Classroom or whatever you have, we want them to do that. If they can't because they don't have tech, we want to give them some things they could do without the tech at their house that will keep their skills up. My biggest concern is kids not doing anything for these 6 weeks and then being off on the summer, and then they're showing up to you with a lot of a gap. And so we want to just reinforce some of the things you've been doing and reinforcing, especially those skills for social studies, as they maybe could do that at home without you having to instruct all of the time.
Hey, Brenda, that's something that just came up. Someone asked about the State Department having a policy on grading during this period. And of course, that is going to be at the district level.
Yeah, because you're local control districts and you determine your grades. So we don't have a policy for that. It's going to be at your district. And I know I know my husband works at sophomore high school and they were talking about that today. So I know those discussions are going on about what you can do for kids and their grades. And if you're going to grade the things, that's going to be per district.
Yeah, and Zena Lewis shared that Flipgrid is a great tool for doing the journaling.
I know a lot of teachers who use Flipgrid. And if this is one of those times you wanted to try a flipped classroom where you did, taped yourself doing a lecture for your kids. I know my my college sophomore daughter, her professor is doing that for them, and he's laughing every time, like, I've never done this before, and this is really weird, and he's at a whiteboard, but he's trying it just to give them some information that he thought they may not get otherwise. So this is a time, once again, for you to try some things and what works for your students. And one thing's not going to fit all, I guess is what I'm telling you. There's not one thing. We have teachers at different places that like different things. So, I mean, it's going to be kind of how you and your students are comfortable.
And
anything else before I
a
show
couple
them?
questions about testing, but I think that
There's going to be no testing. Your juniors will get a medical exemption.
okay.
And even your seniors, they're going to get a medical exemption for the U.S. history test. One of the things I just saw come across, because I can see a little bit of the chat about the new material. I think it's going to be hard for new material for all of your kids unless you have a lot of access for them to do things online, or you're able to get them some kind of documents to read. So, I mean, I think it's, once again, based on what you think you can do. Don't make extra things for yourself that you just think you and your kids can't do. Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'm going to kind of go down this document a little more. So we tried to create some examples, and that's why I had the earlier documents for you guys to put your examples in. We've kind of tried to pick some examples of things kids could do without tech, first of all, and then I'll show you some more with tech. So this is a learning menu. On the document you were just on, it should have a live link to get there. And this is just some things kids could do without tech necessarily. And if you're in that situation, you might see some of these that are just, this is the middle school group. So something like investigating where the goods in your house or the clothing in your house was made, and create a chart or an infographic for that. If you could have the kids do the laundry and look at all the tags and see where they came from, and kind of chart out where their clothes are from or the goods in the house, and get them out there helping you with your laundry and things in the house. Where would they like to travel, and how would they get there, and what would they do, and planning a budget. So these are things to think about. Planning a trip without a GPS. My daughter, I don't think, could do it. So, we've always had our GPS. So what happens when you're out somewhere and you don't have GPS service? If you've gotten down here, if you had a magic wand, what would you create that would make the biggest difference in the world? So just some of those big overall thinking questions that we're working with kids. They could develop an emergency plan, and maybe something their family doesn't have, an emergency plan and a box of supplies for an emergency. Something I've had really good success with kids with is creating a historical marker. If they can look at an example of historical marker in their community, and then they could make one for something they think is important and create it, and where would it go? So these are just some things they could do. Maybe they could create a campaign slogan and a tweet for Abraham Lincoln running for president. Or you'll see kind of down here in the high school group, maybe if they were running for president, what kind of social media campaign would they need? So some things for those general civics things we're talking about that they may not need tech for. And one of those huge things is going to be, I think, some kind of, how did your family respond to this crisis? Because those are going to be primary documents that people are going to want to know. So Todd, would you like to speak to the high school menu?
Yes, I can. high school menu, I tried to make very kind of easy, more enrichment, things that they could do, focus on the skills. Um, a lot about interviewing people in their neighborhood or family. A lot about responding to the current events in the world right now, crisis, everything that's going on. Some about trying to use other, bring in other disciplines such as creative and artistic expression, putting themselves also in the role of government or civic figures today. Really try to make it not resource or tech dependent. So yeah. And then one thing I put for all the grade or for all the subjects is added a piece from the Stanford History Education Group about a personal autobiography, and then having parents or older siblings reflect on it and then edit their or revise their biography based on the feedback they get from there.
Then I'm going to scroll up. So personal financial literacy too, Todd.
Yes,
I mean, economic concepts throughout all of our subjects. So this kind of helps with that too.
Financial literacy, I think, is probably one of the easiest things to teach if for students that do have tech access. But again, I know that's very limited. But I think there are some things that can be done in a financial literacy standpoint, preparing a personal budget, ask their family members about financial advice, devise a saving plan, invest it, or think about a charity that they would either create or give to right now.
Hey, Brenda, I think there's a comment when he was talking about interviewing, make sure we follow the CDC guidelines.
Yes, for sure.
We have quite a bit of stuff for that on our State Department website, and it's updated sometimes more than once a day, depending on what the CDC is putting out.
And on the weekends too, whenever something comes out, they're really good to update that. And so that means they may need to call or text or something like that, where they're not going up to someone and interviewing. And so we hope they're doing that. The next part on our guidance document is the instructional resources. So we pulled a few to showcase right here, and then I'll show you where you can click on where we put a lot of them. And then I know I've missed some, and so that's why I have that document for you guys to crowdsource on the tech, because I can think of a couple that I didn't put on there already by looking at it. So one thing is, if you want to see what a school district is doing for a plan for social studies for the first 3 weeks of their at-home time, this is the DC Public Schools Instructional Plan. When you click on it, you'll go in and you'll click on 6 through 8 or 9 through 12, whichever you teach, and you look for social studies, and it will show you what they're doing for a 3-week period. And it's just an example. They've taken a C3, an inquiry-based lesson, and divided it up into 3 weeks, and because going with the guidelines of we're only going to do a couple 3 days a week maybe for an hour, they've kind of divided that up so you can see what they're doing. I thought you might just want to see what a school district was doing. And so DC is a pretty big school district, but you can kind of see what they're doing, and it's just an example. C3 Teachers is inquiry-based social studies that works with our practices. And the good thing about this is if you have kids who can access it online, they can see all the documents they need to do the activities inside the lesson online, or you could print the packet for them if that's something that has to be done. So either way, they have the resources they need. They don't have to go searching for them. They're all there, and you can kind of divide up the activities. The Oklahoma Council for Social Studies has primary sources that are edited, Oklahoma moment videos if you teach Oklahoma history that are very short, 2 to 3 minute videos about different things. There are presentations, there's lessons that you could have the kids do. So there's all kinds of things on there. As OK, choose our Oklahoma Alliance for Geographic Education. Plenty of resources and lessons on there if you teach geography. You just have to register. It's free, but if you want to see the lessons, you just register. Oklahoma Council on Economic Education also is very good to help us with financial literacy and all things economics. And then Reading Like a Historian is also one of those places. It's Stanford University who's created actual lessons that have the documents in there that the kids need. And so you could either have them go to that and see it online, or you could print for that if you needed to. So I just tried to put a few out here that were like that, all encompassing, so you didn't have to go and search for a lot of things. I'm going to click on the tools for instruction. And so here's a list, and I know it's not an exhaustive list. I've already seen a lot of people over there putting things in the chat. So we will definitely be saving the chat and adding them over here for you. Let me scroll to the, so these are just, and Todd, you can jump anytime. These are just ones we thought you might like to use. And I know it's not all encompassing, but I'll kind of scroll. Beyond the Bubble is also paired with Reading Like a Historian. So when you go to Reading Like a Historian, you'll see at the top a place where you could also go to Beyond the Bubble, which is ways to assess kids without something written or a multiple choice test. NK360 is the National Museum of the American Indian, and they have all kinds of new resources created in the C3 inquiry model. The inquiry design model. And so if you're teaching Oklahoma history or anything in American history to deal with removal or anything like that, they have great resources. The Big History Project is world history. I'm gonna keep scrolling for you. Whoops. Government teachers really like C-SPAN and iCivics. You're probably going to see a lot of things on here that look familiar. Here's the National Archives. Thinker Analytics may be something you haven't looked at before. It's an argument mapping website from some students from Harvard. So the kids will get on there and they can take their argument with evidence and map it out. And it's a really interesting way of showing your thinking about a topic. Todd was telling me Gilder Lehrman just updated their sources on their website. Being that people are at home now working, they've really done a lot to update their things. Something you might think about is the census. I know my family got ours and did it because we were all at home. That might be something the kids could do with their parents, is fill out their census, whether they're mailing it in or doing it online.
Brenda, I have some people in the chat that are wanting, can you tell them once again how they can access what you're showing them?
Sure. So this, let me get back to it if I can. So on your tiny URL, you can go to this site. It's also going to be right now on the website at the top of the page. I'm showing you the sde.ok.gov COVID-19 instruction support. And that will take you right to the website page from our State Department that has all the grades on it. So this is our document, but pre-K through K has a document, first and second has a document, third and fifth has a document, and then all the secondary subjects have a document that looks like this. So if you've got the tiny URL, it should go there directly. And this right here is the link that would take you to the website of the whole thing, where you could see all of them. Does that make sense? I'm gonna shut your eyes so you don't get sick as I scroll back. So all of these things are on this document with all links in there, and that's kind of what I wanted to show you so that you can access all of these. The other thing, I'll scroll to the bottom. The other thing that's on here are social media connections. So the Oklahoma Council for Social Studies, the Oklahoma Council for History Education, the Oklahoma Alliance for Geographic Education, or OCAGE, Oklahoma Council on Economic Education, they all have very active Facebook pages. And some of them are on Twitter, but a lot of them on Facebook. And then OKSS, and there's an OKSS Elementary if you have friends that teach elementary on Facebook that people post into. Also, I try to kind of post in all of those and share different things as we get them. Right now, the best way, if you are missing something and don't know how to access it, you can email Todd or I, because we're working from home, so we're not there on the phone, but you can email us and we'll be happy. I'm checking my email almost. I have it on my phone, so I get it all the time so that I can help out. But this is a document that has a lot of things, a lot of links in it for you to go to. And I'm hoping our crowdsourced document that you have, that has the charts that I wanted you guys to help out with, I'm hoping that you guys will be able to, need you to go. I'm hoping you'll be able to help, like up here, we'll be able to help us with some more tech things that we didn't think about. Uh-oh, I did that. There's this, well, I already talked about this, the special ed document and the ELL document, but there's also OETA has put this out, Learning at Home. And there's going to be a webinar today at 4 o'clock that you can watch on Facebook Live. It's OSDE Facebook Live page where you watched the board meeting the other day. They're going to broadcast this webinar so everyone can see it, because I think it's going to have a limit of how many people can get on. So if you're interested in what OETA is partnering with the State Department to do, and I haven't been on that project, but I know starting very soon, they're going to start doing programming all day long. That's educational programming and not the different shows they might have put in. It may not match up necessarily to exactly your curriculum, but there are a lot of social studies topics that are on there. Okay. Just a few more things. We are going to be meeting Wednesdays at 2 o'clock from 2 to 3 for anyone who wants to join us for secondary social studies each Wednesday. And this was the first one of these. This one's a lot informational, but we'll be able to share some things as we get going and have our successes as we're doing this. And we can share things. And so the Zoom link will be on the document we were just looking at, and it'll be reoccurring. So it'll be the same link every week. Todd or Tim, anything that I forgot?
No, there was a question, and I'm assuming it is about the document you're having them fill out there, and wanting to know if they would keep that for even next year, because there was some good stuff.
Yes, we will keep it, even if it looks a little different. We'll keep it on the social studies page. And
one of the questions, Brenda, is if there are students who do not have internet or technology, how do we communicate ideas you or our district provide? Where do we get the, so they want to know what to do, but I will say that I know there are several internet providers that are providing free service, and there's a document out there floating around. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but look into your service providers, because right now a lot of those companies are offering stuff to students for the remainder of the school year.
And I know school districts are talking about this and ways they could try to do this. And I know some of you have buses that have Wi-Fi, and I know an option in one of the other states we've been talking to is they've taken their Wi-Fi bus and parked it in a neighborhood that they knew didn't really have a lot of connectivity, and the kids can't get on the bus, but if it's close to their house, they can log on, or they can drive to that parking lot and get on. And I can't remember exactly what state that is. I want to say it was Arkansas, but I could be wrong. Have been doing that. So there, states are sharing ideas of how they're getting together and trying to help kids. What I put on the screen is the latest CDC about packets, because this was a big question we've had all day. So we wanted to show you. that right as of right now, what it says is based on the information from the World Health Organization, the likelihood of an infected person contaminating goods is low, and the risk of catching the virus from a package that has been moved or traveled is also low. However, you're going to, whenever you touch something, you're going to maybe wear gloves and wash your hands and do all the things they've asked us to do. So that's the latest from it. So it doesn't tell you you can't do packets. Your school district may decide not to go that way, but this is the latest guidelines we have, and the State Department has to work with the CDC guidelines. So this is the latest things we would have for your district.
Brenda, is the weekly link, is it on this document at the bottom? I'm not sure. I think it is, isn't it?
It's on the social studies document. It's on the guidance document. I'll just click it to show you again on the guidance document, and I'm going to scroll now, so hopefully it doesn't hurt your eyes or make you sick. As I'm scrolling, on page 4 at the bottom, there's a link to the Zoom meeting, and that's the link you'll use every time. So it's a reoccurring meeting. We won't have to send you out a different link. And I know there's lots and lots of tech ideas. And I noticed in the chat, yes, the OSSBA has a lot of resources available on their learning platform. Voices of Oklahoma has a lot of oral accounts of history for different subjects from all over Oklahoma. And it's a great resource I forgot to put on there. So I know there's things we forgot. So I know that you guys will help me out on the document up at the table so that we can add some of those. And I noticed somebody said this, if you have an iPhone and you open the notes and you turn on your camera, you'll be able to scan in your work and they can send it to you. So I know that was in the notes. That is one thing that everyone's been sharing, and I know there's others, but if your kids or you have an iPhone and you open up the notes and you turn on the camera, you can scan a document through there. And I know there's other scanning apps you can also put on for that, but that's been something that was shared today about ways they were thinking of trying to communicate back and forth also. There are a lot of things, data plans and internet access that's reliable. In fact, on our meetings we've all been dropped off of calls and things. So everybody's on. And so I know connectivity is really tough. So that's our grace thing. Grace with kids if their internet conks on them or they don't have really great access to it if that's what you're trying to do. One of the things we really want to reiterate is this is a learning experience. If you try something and it doesn't work, we'll just try something else. Don't feel bad about it. Don't beat yourself up on it. We're just learning new things and new ways to do it. And your district, you're going to be meeting with your districts and they're going to be creating plans for your population of students that make sense. And once again, it's not going to be a 7-hour day. Like if you're in high school, a 7-hour day that you're used to. So don't think you're at your computer for 7 and 8 hours at a time. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Once again, yesterday I had to learn something and there were lots of tears. And that was just what I needed to release the stress. And my daughter's like, Mom, here, I can help you. And she had me back on and fixing it. And so those things are going to happen. Don't feel bad about it. And just know it's the natural coping mechanisms we're all going to have in the time we're not used to doing. Todd, anything else you'd like to?
I do want to encourage people to share ideas and let's crowdsource what's working for everybody else and kind of help each other out during this time because it's going to be a learning experience for all of us.
Yes, and so that chart that has the 4 different documents, if you're high school, please think about tech and non-tech ideas you can share, and if you're middle school, share on those pages. And I'm hoping we'll be able to share some of those at the next meeting on Wednesday. I see a question about the possible end of the year. So when the schools were shut, they also had a waiver to end your, if you wish to end your school early, you can. So that's once again up to your district and school board, but yes, you can. I think it's that 8th through the 15th window that if you want to, you can do it. You can end early.
That was my understanding also.
Mhm.
There's going to be a lot, like, we don't want kids to be, doing absolutely nothing for 6 weeks. It doesn't mean they're going to do everything you ask them to do because they didn't do that before. But we hope they're working on, something and doing something they find. And if this is a chance for something you had that you thought they might be interested in but didn't have time to do, this might be the time to try it out and see if that works. And like I said, if you look at the DC one as an example, and they're thinking about taking a project that would probably take the kids 4 or 5 days and just spreading it out, because knowing they're not going to work on it every day. We've worked on this. We know it's not the end all be all, but we just tried to give you ideas. And I know you guys are going to have much better ideas for us. And we're excited about what we can crowdsource on the document. Timmy, do you see any more questions?
No,
Todd, anything else to add?
No, I think just to kind of thankful to see more process to see where we're headed.
Todd and Timmy and I are excited to have this document released because we've been working on it nonstop all day, all night, trying to get it out to you so you had something. The one thing we really want to push is you are not in this alone. We are all learning together. We want to help you any way we can. We like Todd's background for sure. I had a background on before and it was kind of being wonky, so I decided not to put it on, but I've learned how to do that. So those are things you can learn on Zoom, is how to change your background, and that's because Timmy sent Ian, showed us how. So we're all learning, and we screwed up on Zoom this morning. We're all learning. So if you're doing this with your kids, don't feel bad. And my kids used to tell me, Miss Chapman, I'll just do that for you because I'll just do that tech for you. And I'm like, okay, thanks.
and I will tell you, my son's teachers did Zoom with him yesterday, and that was definitely the highlight of his day. He loved it.
Once again, you can email us. We're not in the office